Good evening, and welcome to the Fairbanks North Star Borough School Board regular meeting. I'd like to call this regular meeting to order. Okay, it's my first meeting, guys. Bear with me. Our mission statement is, our mission is to provide an excellent, equitable education in a safe, supported environment so all students will succeed and contribute to a diverse and changing society. We will have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Doran tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will have the students here soon. Okay, so we'll go on with one more thing, and then we'll have them come in. Okay. First, Sharon, call the roll, please.
Mr. Jerome?
Here.
Colonel Bondurant is excused. Colonel Fisher?
Here.
Mrs. Sanderson?
Here.
Mr. Rice?
Here.
Mrs. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. McConnell is excused. Ms. Marotti?
Here.
Mr. Doran?
Here.
Mrs. Dominique?
Here.
The board has a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sharon. We'll read 2018 ASAA First National Bank Alaska Cross Country Running State Champion. Core values: high expectations, maintain high expectations and educational opportunities to inspire high achievement. Kendall Kramer, West Valley Jr., won the girls' individual state title at 2018 ASAA First National Bank Alaska Cross Country Running State Championship, held in September in Anchorage. Assistant Superintendent Sean Krasker will make the presentation, and I'll meet you at the podium.
Good evening. And I'm looking out and I see Kendall in the audience. Kendall, I'm going to ask you to come up here right now so that you can be standing next to me while I say all these wonderful things. So it's my pleasure this evening to recognize one of the strongest high school runners to come out of Alaska and Fairbanks, and I think ever. And that's Kendall Kramer, who's currently a junior at West Valley High School. So being a lifelong learner and growing through setting and reaching personal goals, I think, are things that we probably all aspire to just simply as human beings, or at least hopefully we do. But as a fierce and competitive athlete, individual improvement on a personal level is the key to success for Kendall as an athlete. This is hard, isn't it? You can stand a little closer. As a top-ranked athlete in our state, as well as in the lower 48, Kendall has a strong drive to advance herself and as a result, continues to improve by huge margins every year as a runner. In the fall of 2016 as a freshman, she was second at the state championships, which in and of itself is incredible. And it was her fastest time as a freshman runner. That was interesting according to her coach because she came to West Valley thinking that she wasn't that good of a runner at that point. As a sophomore in 2017, Kendall ran head-to-head all season long with the top-ranked female runner at the time, and at the Palmer Invitational meet, lost by 1 step, setting a personal best record, but missing first place by 1 step. Kendall's response to the challenge of again facing that same runner at state last year was that she took control of the race early, maintaining that lead, and she never looked back. And since that very close ending and finish as a sophomore, Kendall has yet to lose another race in the state of Alaska. This year as a junior, Kendall defeated all of the runners who were gunning for her throughout the season, dropping personal bests at several of her races and culminating in an outstanding race at state where she again won with a personal best by a 27-second margin. Thus, in 3 consecutive state races over the very challenging Bartlett High School running course, Kendall has run personal records 3 straight times. And her time this year was the fastest 5K ever run by a West Valley girl, surpassing the previous record by Crystal Pitney in 2005. Kendall is equally competitive out of state, running personal best races in Washington and Oregon on extremely fast courses with runners who compete much longer across the season. Her hard work, day in day, season after season, allow her to learn constantly, to grow personally, and to perform in peak fashion over and over again. And oh, as an aside, she's also an outstanding Nordic skier. Fairbanks has a superstar in Kendall. She's a running legacy, not yet even done with high school, and we will certainly see more from her in the very near future. So please join me, her fellow peers and athletes, her coaches for running and skiing, and of course her parents who are here this evening as we recognize and congratulate Kendall Kramer for the 2018 Female State Championship for cross country running.
So Dan didn't get to talk, which is really unfortunate. But I'm really glad that I've got to have such a good relationship with Dan throughout the past 3 years, because without that he wouldn't know how I like to work out, how I like to train, exactly what I need and exactly what I need every day in every race. And so it's really important to have such a good relationship with him, and he's just an awesome guy and awesome coach at the same time.
Are the students ready? We can go on to the next agenda item if you like. You want to go now? Okay. While they're setting up, we will now have music by the Midnight Sun Elementary School. A core value, high expectations, maintain high expectations and educational opportunities to inspire high achievement. The Midnight Sun Elementary School Intermediate Band will perform for the school board under the direction of Leslie Wilgrade. Tell me her name, kids. Whitgriff. Thank you. So I should have gave you the mic, huh? Music teacher.
Check. Okay, so sorry for our delay. We had a little bus confusion, so we are going to play a few notes first just to be sure that our instruments work, because they were sitting outside for 20 minutes, and then we are going to perform. So if you'll give us a couple minutes to warm up, that would be great. Okay, let's do a call and response. Okay. I'll try to sing. 1, 2, me first. Ta. Ta 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 ta. Okay, so my name is Liesl Whitgriff, and I teach at 3 elementary schools in the district, Texas Brown, North Pole E, and this one, Midnight Sun.
And these are my fifth grade intermediate students, and they have been studying their instrument for a whole year already, and then these first few months of the school year. We're going to perform two sort of creepy songs for you because it's right around Halloween. The first one's called Hey Ho, Nobody's Home. Okay, and the second one is called Invaders.
Can you pass around the mic so that they can introduce themselves?
Yes, we can. Okay, here we go.
Hi, I'm Lily, and I play the bass clarinet. Hi, I'm Lauren, and I play the alto saxophone. Hi, I'm Jessica, and I play the alto saxophone. Hi, I'm Aiden, and I play the alto saxophone. Hey, I'm Kaylin, and I play the clarinet. Hello, my name is Serena, and I play the clarinet. Hi, I'm Frank, and I play the clarinet. Hi, I'm Autumn, and I play the flute. Hi, I'm JJ, and I play the snare drum and bass drum.
Hi, my name is Bobby, and I play snare and bass.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I play the trumpet. Hi, my name is Brooklyn, and I play the trumpet. Hi, my name is Samuel, and I play the trumpet. Hi, Mom.
Hi, my name is Adrian, and I play the trumpet.
Hi, my name is Drake, and I play trombone. Hi, my name is Hunter, and I play trombone.
And thank you for letting us perform.
Thank you all ever so much for making the way here. It was a little dreadful there for a little while for you, but thank you for showing up. Okay, next we will have ESP of the month. Okay, get to my next page. Core values, high expectations, maintain high expectations and educational opportunities to inspire higher achievement. Connie Cluton, Lathrop High School Transcript Secretary, will be recognized as the ESP of the Month for November 2018. Sean Kraska, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, will make the presentation. And not telling on anybody's age or anything, but Connie was there when my kids went to school.
Oh, good evening again. I'm grateful and honored to be able to acknowledge an outstanding employee in our district, a Lathrop High School longtime pillar of tradition and support, Ms. Connie Cluton. While there are so many reasons Connie is deserving of this recognition this evening, her administrators, her colleagues at Lathrop, her family really hit the highlights of why she was nominated for this recognition. Connie is such a great presence at Lathrop High School. She's always calm, very cool, collected, doesn't get unnerved, and always ready to help any staff member in any way, no matter what their need is. Her dedication to Lathrop as a parent, she wants the school to be a place where every single person is welcome and feels they're a part of something great. Connie does so much to keep the counseling office running smoothly and works very well with everyone, especially always ready to meet parents and students when they walk in the doors of that counseling office with a warm smile, making them feel welcome. Such an important thing right off the bat, that customer service. It's a compliment and more than fair, I think, to call Connie the historian of Lathrop. If she doesn't know the answer to a question about Lathrop High School, she is absolutely quick to find it out. I think it's probably unusual that she wouldn't know the answer, though. She works behind the scenes to make events such as commencement and Lathrop's Evening of Excellence a success year after year after year. Connie is also frequently at the stands in football and basketball games, supporting the Lathrop Malamutes and cheering on the purple and gold with pride. She truly cares about making Lathrop High School a great place for everyone. Her care and consistent focus on doing the best job that she can with whatever it is she's involved with makes Lathrop shine. Connie's dedication and care for our district has not gone unnoticed outside the school. She served on the district policy committee for many years, sharing her perspective and valuable opinions as both an employee but also as a parent. She truly wants what's best for our district and is dedicated to help make that happen in any way that she is able. So please join me, our district administration, Connie's family members that I see here this evening, and a very proud representation of the Lathrop High School staff in congratulating Connie Cluton, November's ESP of the Month. She is truly deserving of this. Congratulations. Are you giving her that? Okay.
Wasn't prepared to say anything, but I just want to say that it's been a wonderful experience being at Lathrop. Our 4 children graduated from Lathrop, and I couldn't be more proud to be a Malamute family member, an employee. I had to wear purple tonight, and I worked with so many of all of you, Karen, Wendy, Sharon, lots of folks here in this room I've worked with over the years, and it's been great time. I just love Lathrop High School, and I love this district, and I think we are all trying to do what's best for our children, and that we have to keep that as a focus to do what's right for our children. Thank you.
Okay, adoption of the agenda. Core values, student-centered, centered everything we do on the student and student learning. Consent agenda items marked with an asterisk are considered routine items not requiring a public discussion by the school board. Unless removed from the consent agenda, asterisk items will be automatically approved when the agenda is adopted. Questions concerning these items should be directed to the administration before the meeting. If the superintendent or a member of the public wishes to have an item removed from the consent agenda, the request must be made to a board member anytime prior to the start of the meeting. The board member has the discretion to accept or deny the request. Only a board member may remove an item from the consent agenda. If an item is removed from the consent agenda, it shall be considered separately as the last item of new business. Asterisk items will be adopted by one single motion. Go on. Okay. Presentation on agenda item?
A motion.
Oh,
Move.
okay. A motion to,
Okay, move to adopt the agenda with consent items.
Second.
you read the consent agenda item?
Take the vote. And then revote.
Call the roll.
Colonel Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Jerome,
Yes.
Mrs. Sanderson,
Yes.
Mr. Rice,
Yes.
Mrs. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Marati,
Yes.
Mr. Doran,
Yes.
Mrs. Dominique.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, so now we go to read the consent agenda items.
The board has accepted the award in the amount of $1,324,183 for the Alaska 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant from the United States Department of Education through the Alaska Department of Education Early Development per Fiscal Note 2019-11. They've accepted the award in the amount of $114,525 for the Title I, Part D, Subpart 2, Neglected and Delinquent Grant from the United States Department of Education through the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development per Fiscal Note 2019-12. They have accepted the award in the amount of $35,658.66 for the Title X, Part C, McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Grant from the United States Department of Education through the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development per Fiscal Note 2019-13. They have accepted the award in the amount of $27,250 for the Suicide Awareness, Prevention, and Postvention Grant from the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development per Fiscal Note 2019-14. They've accepted the award in the amount of $1 million for the grants to local educational agencies for military-connected academic and support programs from the Department of Defense Education Activity per Fiscal Note 2019-15. They have accepted the award in the amount of $250,000 for the Alaska Pre-Elementary Implementation Grant from the Alaska Department of Education Early Development per Fiscal Note 2019-16. They have accepted the award in the amount of $27,620 for the Staff Development Grant from the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development per Fiscal Note 2019-17. The board has approved Lathrop High School's request for its JROTC program to raise funds to send 2 JROTC instructors, 4 chaperones, and 14 cadets to Honolulu, Hawaii, March 6th to the 14th, 2019, where the cadets will compete in a drill competition, visit military installations, and participate in a wreath-laying ceremony, among other activities, with the district paying for substitute costs, and if Homeland Security issues travel warnings, the students will not travel. The board has accepted the gift of $5,000 from a donor who wishes to remain private to Weller Elementary School to be used towards the purchase of new playground equipment. They have accepted the gift of $1,000 from the Eielson Officer Spouses Club to Ben Eielson Junior-Senior High School to purchase the Writing Assistance Program, Turn It In. They have accepted the gift of $3,470 from the Seekins Ford Lincoln's Ford Motor Drive 4-year school program to Hutchinson High School to be used to support school activities. They have accepted the gift of $6,165.12 from Huddle Fundraising to Lathrop High School to be used to support the school's football program. They've accepted the gift of $2,000 from Pat Faudry to West Valley High School to purchase supplies for the Wolf Den's student clothing closet and approve the minutes from the regular meeting on June 5th,
and the special meetings on October 15th and 29th, 2018 as submitted. They have approved the personnel action report for the period October 6th to the 26th, 2018. They have acknowledged the personnel information report for the period October 6th to the 26th, 2018, the board's reading file, and the coming events and meeting announcements.
Thank you, Ms. Tuttle. Presentation on agenda items. Any person wishing to speak on an agenda item, action item, or reports will have 3 minutes to testify when that item is before the school board for discussion. There is a limit of 1 hour total testimony per item. Public comments on non-agenda items. Hold on. Go to the next page. Core values. Collaborative, engage with students, families, staff, and community to support student success. Public comments on non-agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person for a maximum of 1 hour. People on the sign-up list will be called first. If there is time, people who did not sign up may address the school board. A person testifying must state their name and city of residence for the record. Board members may ask questions for clarification. Although there is time at the end of each meeting for school board and superintendent comments, some concerns may not be able to be addressed immediately, as additional information may need to be gathered. Okay, I will call the people on the sign-up sheet first, and the first name I have is Madison Horosia. You can correct me when you come up, ma'am. I need you to state your name and the city of residence.
Hi, my name is Madison Hirosa. I live in North Pole, Alaska. I'm an 8th grader from North Pole Middle School, and I would like to review our school's dress code. I've been reviewing the dress code for quite some time now, and I would like to ask the school board to review the dress code soon. When girls my age go shopping in Fairbanks or wherever, it is difficult to find clothes that fit the dress code because of current fashion. The clothes our parents buy to fit the dress code cost more money, and some of us don't have that kind of money to buy them. I'm not asking that everything in the dress code changes, but that it could be more reasonable. Guys don't have to worry about the dress code, and sometimes they brag about never getting called out. I feel that is unfair. Most girls our age don't feel confident, let alone the dress code adding to poor self-esteem. Being worried about getting stopped in the halls just creates more stress. I feel our dress code is creating problems, not solving them. Thank you for listening. I hope I can influence your point of view.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Hiroshia? Mr. Dorn.
Thanks for coming to speak to us tonight and to share. Is there something in particular about the dress code that is, you said that the general dress code is not a problem, but there might be some particular details?
Yeah, for example, like how leggings in at least my school are like a problem, and ripped jeans and like some shirts that show shoulders are like a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Marati.
Thank you for talking to us tonight. Can you tell us maybe some ideas that you would like to see as changes to the dress code?
Yeah, I wouldn't like, for example, like not be so strict on the dress code, and for it to be more reasonable. Yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for making your testimony tonight.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And next is Alexis Clemente. Is that you, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. You could have stayed in your seat and just pulled the mic over, but that's okay.
Okay. Hi, my name is Alexis Clemente. I'm from Fairbanks, Alaska.
Can you pull the mic closer because you have a very soft voice?
I am an 8th grade student from North Pole Middle. I'm here to talk about my problems I've had with the school district's dress code. I feel like the dress code needs to be revised, and it's been 4 years since it's been revised. Time has changed, and I think the dress code should with it. Some of the dress codes help with safety issues, but other parts of the dress code I feel are biased against girls. For example, most girls wear leggings, but there but they are comfortable for us. They are part of our culture. This is not a safety issue. Because our dress codes focus in on girls' clothes, the girls feel attacked and does not feel like we are treated equally with the boys in their fashion. I talked to some of my girlfriends that attend other middle schools in our district. Many of us feel even though the boys are often breaking dress code too, they don't get looked at or called out as much. We're not trying to focus in on the problems that the boys don't have, but the problems that the girls do have. What can we do to make girls feel more comfortable? Because girls our age already struggle with low self-esteem. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Hold on one second. Let me see if board members have questions for you. Any questions for Ms. Clemente? Okay, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, I have Justin Lopez.
Hello, my name is Justin Lopez. I'm a current resident of Fairbanks, Alaska. I've been here for 3 years. I'm a student at UAF. That's my reason for being here. I'm studying petroleum engineering, a senior, and I'm also president of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, which is a national nonprofit organization. I'm here today to talk to you about an event that we're holding. And I'm talking to the Fairbanks School District because it's directly tied to the Fairbanks Middle School crowd. It's part of Alaska Startup Week. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Alaska Startup Week. It's fairly new, or roughly 3 years I think it's been running. And I think this is the first time it's happening here in Fairbanks, Alaska. My recent experience with AK Startup Weeks in general, what it is it's a week full of, or a weekend. The scope that I did as far as my experience was a Fairbanks Startup Weekend. And it's pretty much AK Startup Week highlights entrepreneurship and innovation within the Fairbanks community, students included, especially young minds like myself. I never had experience with my 4 years going to college, roughly 4 years going to college so far. I've never had experience of actually starting my own business. Even the business classes that I took with my previous experience never really set it down for me. Step one, how to start a business, all the way to making your own ideas that we all have and pushing them to pursue the entrepreneur side of things. I'm here today to as a student ambassador of Fairbanks Startup Week, which is occurring from November 12th to the 16th, as the week is occurring here coming up. And I'm representing as a student ambassador with a man named Peter Webley, who is the Associate Director of Research at UAF. Great guy, very resourceful, and he took it upon me to be the student connections within the organizations around the Fairbanks community, mostly on with organizations like Society of Women Engineers, National Society of Black Engineers, American Society of Civil Engineers, students offering leadership development, aerospace, active and innovation minds. So many organizations, and what we're trying to do is throw on an event called Noches de Ciencias, which is Science Night translated. And what this is it's aimed towards the grades 6th through 9th grade, and it's pretty much emphasizing the STEM awareness. STEM meaning science, technology, engineering, mathematics, which I understand that the school district's trying to emphasize with engineering and science currently. And we want to be, I myself as president want to start reaching out to the community, and that's why I'm here today to express my this event and how we can get the word out, and you can help me.
Okay, thank you very much. And you're speaking to us right on time. We just received $1 million grant in STEM for military kids.
Really?
So yes, we just got that grant. Are there any questions for? Yes, Mr. Rice.
So we just got these flyers that were just handed out. What are some of the activities that you guys are going to have at Randy Smith? And I'm just asking so the radio audience can hear about some of the plans that you guys have planned for that night?
Well, thank you for asking that question. I'm glad you asked. So as I mentioned, the 7 organizations that are student organizations that are listed prior, I'm getting with them, and they're holding events, science experiments that are interactive for the students within the 6th through 9th grade crowd. And interactive meaning that they can actually put together, like aerospace, for example, is doing like model flights and rockets that the students can build and set off. Society of Petroleum Engineers, what I think I forgot to mention, with American Association of Drilling Engineers, they're coming up with like a science experiment dealing with like a simplified experiment of how we extract oil from the ground, and that's what hits home with my degree because I am a petroleum engineer. So they're doing like a sand model with a Coke bottle at the bottom and taking a drill, drilling through it, and it shoots up from the sand. So it's pretty events like that. Society of Women Engineers, they're making more of a flubber, it's like a Play-Doh sort of. It's a flubber that the students can make their own and play with and take home with them. So it's the whole goal of this event, Noches de Ciencias Science Night, is just to get the students thinking of and to see the possibilities, what wait for them in high school, as many Lathrop and West Valley, and the events that happened at the university with these organizations, where at the end of the day, students want to feel like they're included, have some value, and have a place to go and feel like they're a part of the university. And that's what I'm trying to push here, and trying to spread diversity amongst the Fairbanks community and in the UAF community as well. So,
just to follow up.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Rice.
And can you just expand a little bit more on the innovation and the entrepreneurship? That is going to expand from that?
Yes. So we are having representatives. As I mentioned, Peter Webley, he's going to be there as a rep for AK Startup Week, and him and some of the other organizations like Students Offering Leadership Development and Active and AIM, which is Active and Innovation Minds, they're going to be working together kind of to emphasize how disciplines, whether it's mechanical engineering, civil engineering, petroleum engineering, or whatever discipline it might be, business, accounting, those aren't your only options. We want to emphasize that students, no matter what age you are, have the possibility of starting your own business. And that's when we get into entrepreneurship and innovation, which is like science experiments, which we're going to be holding for them, how they can come up with fun experiments on their own, not be afraid to express their ideas, no matter how little they might think it is. We want to entice them to pursue and push their ideas to go further and start their own business if that's what they want to do.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Marati?
I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that with us. It sounds like it's going to be a great night for the students in our school district. Can you just clarify, so all of those activities that you just talked about, all of that is on one night?
One night, and that's happening November 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. There's going to be food provided, and we're currently, with our chapter being so new, we're currently looking for funding opportunities through the university. We're finding some roadblocks there to just pay for some food. Just to entice the parents. We really want parents to be there as well. It's open to the public. Of course, I want to watch my wording there when I say public, because I know there's some regulations, restrictions requiring when it comes to middle school with public having an event open to the public. So I'm going to do my research on that and make sure I'm not stepping any grounds there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No one else? Well, thank you very much for giving us that information.
Thank you for your time.
All right. No one else has signed up. If anyone else wanted to come and speak to a non-agenda item. Okay. Need you to give your name and your location that you're from.
My name is Christina Clemente. I live in Fairbanks. I'm a teacher at Ticketsook Brown Elementary. And I just wanted to support my daughter and what she presented to the board on her agenda of having you guys review the dress code, and just let you know from a parental perspective that it really does affect her. She comes home, sometimes she really likes wearing leggings because she does a lot of gymnastics and flipping around and jumping rope and stuff. She stays very active, but she dresses very modestly. And so she goes to school in long sleeves and a sweatshirt and a coat. She loves layers. And she still gets dress coded, and she doesn't look the least bit provocative. And so she comes home, and I share her frustrations because I have 6 children, 5 of which are girls, so I'm very well aware that I like to keep my girls covered, and I'm very into them being modest. And she does come home and share with me that she feels frustrated, and that her girlfriends at school feel frustrated, that they do feel targeted simply because of gender bias in the dress code, and that boys can wear something much more revealing, stuff that, shows more skin, and it's not an issue. And I feel like it is time to maybe revamp the code a bit, and keep in mind that just because, leggings are form-fitting, but I don't think they're that much more form-fitting than the skinny jeans that, if there was an emergency, that most of the children wouldn't be able to, bend or stoop or run in. As a teacher in a high school in the lower 48, we had a tornado, and we had to all go in the hallway, and the high schoolers that were wearing skinny jeans could not crouch and cover their heads because their jeans were too restrictive. But the kids in leggings certainly could. So with that in mind, I do feel that they're not asking for them to be able to wear mini skirts and, nothing but their bras. They're just asking to be able to show a little bit of personality and comfort. And I know there's a common sense aspect to it, and there still has to be some restrictions because not everybody has the same common sense. Yeah. So just on behalf of, I can see it from the teacher perspective, the parent perspective, and the female perspective. So.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments, and I really thank you for supporting your students, your kids. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Clemente? Ms. Morati.
Thank you so much for speaking up, not only for yourself, but for your students and your daughter. Can you just clarify some of the priorities that you think need to be looked at more than others? I heard you talk about leggings and comfort. Can you just clarify a little bit more on that?
I think maybe the strap is an issue where I think it has to be three finger. It has to, if somebody comes up and puts their 3 fingers to your strap, and if your bra strap is showing or your strap is not large enough to cover those 3 fingers, then you get dress coded. If your shirt doesn't cover, your skirt doesn't meet your hands. If your butt is not covered. If you're wearing leggings and your butt is not covered by your shirt, like if you're not wearing a tunic length shirt, then you get dress coded. It has to be front and back. So if she was doing gymnastics, and then when she stood up and like, ta-da, and then her shirt was up in the back, and so her rear end would be showing because she's wearing leggings, that would be a dress code violation. And that exact instance has happened. And so it's the straps and then also the leggings.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Rice?
This isn't so much for her, but do we have this coming up anytime soon since it's been about 4 years?
We actually do. So secondary principals, I think high school principals for sure, and they all are part of the same group, actually brought this to one of their early meetings this fall and recognized the principals are asking for a change as well. So they're reviewing it right now, and middle schools will be part of that. So I think after they do that work and are ready, then we'll move forward with some of that.
So that I also feel like my daughter and other children have mentioned to me that they feel like it's arbitrarily enforced. If a teacher has just had an argument with a kid or is in a grumpy mood or didn't get their coffee, then they may be more apt to say, you're dress coded, go to the office, as opposed to if it's a well-behaved student or a student that gets good grades or a student that gets along well and is very amiable with teachers, it might not get as enforced. And it's definitely gender bias in its enforcement also. And so they're asking that it's enforced unanimously if it's going to be enforced, and that it doesn't have so many gender restrictions, especially with today having a more androgynous youth where they wear whichever clothing they'd like. So a boy could wear a skirt if he wanted, and it wouldn't necessarily be held to the same standard.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Clemente.
Thank you.
Anybody else coming to make a testimony on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll close the testimony period. We'll move on to information and reports. Alaska's Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA state plan. Core value, high expectations. Maintain high expectations and educational opportunities to inspire high achievement. Helen Clark, Executive Director of Federal Programs, and Dr. Ellis Ott, Senior Research Analyst, will present an overview of the accountability section of Alaska's Every Student Succeeds Act state plan, including a status report on Fairbanks North Star Borough School District school designations. Could I get, don't need a motion on this, right? Okay, thank you. Ms. Clark and Dr. Ellis Ott, will you do your presentation?
Absolutely. So the format of our presentation is that I'll give you an overview of the accountability system and the system for school support, and then Dr. Ott and I will be available for questions. So in front of you, you have a 3-page overview of about 30 pages of the of Alaska's state plan for the accountability system, which is why on the last page of the infographic, there's a link for you to get back to the DEED website if you'd like to look deeper. So first of all, just to give you the frame, we need to remember that the Every Student Succeeds Act exists because there's vulnerable students. And its purpose is to help districts and schools measure their performance on key indicators and to identify areas for improvement and to target resources and supports for equity. Really, the Every Student Succeeds Act is an act for equity. And so I like to remind myself, because we've had a break for a couple years from school report cards and from comparisons, and that got comfortable. And we're going to move back into an uncomfortable age of school designations and needing to talk about achievement gaps, but we need to talk about it because they're there. So at the front end of the accountability system are statewide long-term goals. And so those goals include a goal to reduce the non-proficient students in English language arts and math by 50% by the year 2026, 2027. And that comes from peak scores. And we're not only looking to reduce by 50% the number of non-proficient students, for all students, but we're also looking to reduce that for each subgroup. Another long-term goal is to have a 70% progress rate for the English language subgroup by 2026. The state baseline is 41.9%, so we have a ways to go. Another is to achieve a 4-year graduation rate of 90% for all students, and again for each subgroup. And then a 5-year graduation rate of 93%, again for all students in each subgroup. So I've mentioned subgroups several times now. The state identified subgroups, actually federal identified subgroups for the accountability system are listed there. There are 9 of them: African American, Alaska Native American Indian, Asian Pacific Islander, Caucasian, Hispanic, 2 or more races, students with disabilities, English learners, and economically disadvantaged. And you'll notice an asterisk by English learners. That's because new in the Every Student Succeeds Act this year, we're going to be able to include formally identified English learners who exited up to 3 years ago. And that's a good thing. That means that we get credit for bringing English learners to proficiency for 3 years after they've exited. And as of next year and forward from there, we'll be able to include formally identified for up to 4 years. The participation rate required, and that's in PEAKS testing as part of this accountability system, is 95%. And the minimum N size, which would be the minimum group size in order to be counted in this accountability system, is 10. The state does have a system in place for extremely small schools where you can take an average of 3 years in order to get to 10,
and to protect student identity, but to be able to give them some sense of feedback. Our state, like many states, has chosen a 100-point index, and I like to ask people up front, especially those of us who live in education land, to forget about A through F. When we see a 100-point system, when we work in education, we tend to think, 90% above is an A, 80% above is a B, and we need to not think about that with this accountability index. We're looking at getting to a graduation rate of 90. We're looking at reducing non-proficient by 50%, and so you're not going to see 100% on this index, and it's just doesn't equate to think of it in terms of A through F. The accountability index itself has separate categories for K-6 and 712. A school with both K-6 and 712 students will get indicator scores for both groups and then a combined final score for the school. But otherwise, you'll see that K-6 schools will be held against the K-6 index, which is broken down 15% for English language arts achievement on the PEAKS test, 15% for math achievement on the PEAKS test, 20% for growth in English language arts and math. And that's moving students from one year to the next in proficiency levels in the PEAKS test. So if a student is far below proficient one year, we'd be looking to move them to below proficient or advanced proficient in the next year. It also includes, it assigns 15% to English learner progress, and that is measured through what's called an access test that comes out of WIDA. It's a test used specifically for English learner students. It is through research-based understood that we should be able to get an English learner student to proficiency within a 7-year time period, and each year the state will be looking at, based on the proficiency level of an English learner student coming into your district or coming into that year, did you move them forward to get them exited, to get them to proficiency before that 7-year time runs out. Chronic absenteeism counts as 10%. Students need to attend 90% or more to not be considered chronically absent. And then in K-6, your grade 3 English language proficiency is 5%. And so that's that on grade level reading by 3rd grade that you'll hear about. In the 7 through 12 index, achievement in English language arts and math each account for 30% each of the index. Your 4-year graduation rate accounts for 15%. Your 5-year graduation rate, 5%. Your English learner progress, 10%. And chronic absenteeism, 10%. From that index, the index became public on October 23rd, and also what became public were the school designations. And here are the school designations under the Every Student Succeeds Act. The most serious designation is a school identified for comprehensive support, and you can be identified for 3 reasons. The first is that you're one of the lowest 5% of Title I schools in the state. Another is that you have a 4-year graduation rate of 66 2/3 or less. And another is that you are a targeted support school for one of your subgroups for 3 or more years. A targeted support school is identified for one reason, and that's that you have a consistently underperforming subgroup. And it's a little bit complicated to understand, but it does make sense. So you have a subgroup of students, so those 9 subgroups that I talked about before, so the index is applied to that subgroup of students, and if that subgroup of students is performing lower than the highest performing, lowest 5% of title schools, then you're identified for targeted support. Essentially what it means is that you have a subgroup of students performing extremely low based on the index. The third designation is universal support, and that's just all schools not identified as comprehensive or targeted support. So specific to Fairbanks, as of October 23rd, we have 4 schools identified for comprehensive support and 1 for targeted support. Our 4 schools identified for comprehensive support are alternative learning systems, and that's for a graduation rate of 30.77%, a 4-year graduation rate. Fairbanks Best for a 4-year graduation rate of 47.17%. Golden Heart Academy for a 40% 4-year rate, and Star of the North for a 51.22% 4-year rate. And I have an error on this infographic. I identified the CEC campus, and the state does not separate Star of the North campuses in its reporting, and so it's Star of the North Charter School represented in that grad rate. And then our 1 school identified for targeted support is Lathrop High School, and that's for an Alaska Native American Indian Student Group Index value of 13.68, which is lower than 15.91, which is the highest index value of the lowest 5% of title schools. So with that, we'll turn it over to any questions you may have.
Any board member has any questions on this presentation? Ms. Morati.
I just had a couple questions. Going back to the sub. Is it? Hello? Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just close it. I'm new to this.
Okay.
Yeah, we got this.
Okay.
All right. What does formally identified mean in regards to the subgroups? You talked about it for just a moment, but I would prefer a little bit more explanation.
Sure. Formally identified is applying only to the English learner group. So what's interesting is that if you are successful in getting an English learner to proficiency, under the old system, you no longer got credit for that. And so if you're looking at English learner growth and you have to eliminate all your students who met proficiency, you're hurting your overall score. But now, under ESSA, for this year, we're allowed to include students who have exited for up to 3 years after they've exited.
And I had one more question.
Go ahead, Ms. Milrighty.
What does TSI, under the comprehensive support image that you showed, what does TSI stand for?
Targeted support and improvement. So no, don't worry. This is jargon. About the time we get it down, there'll be a new Education Act, and we'll learn new jargon.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mr. Dorn, and then Ms. Lambert. I couldn't think of your last name. And then Ms. Joy.
Just a couple of questions. The statewide long-term goals, the 50% reduction in non-proficient, that's based on the peak scores from 2017. Is that correct?
They actually started with 16-17.
The 16-17 school year.
Going forward. So you're right, peak scores from 17-18, right?
Yeah, spring 17, right. So they're looking at about a 30% improvement, so we'd be up to about 70. They're looking at a 70% target on the peak scores in 10 years.
Right, somewhere around there. I can't remember off the top of my head the statewide peaks proficiency rate in ELA and math. And I think the 50% reduction is you look at the non-proficient group.
Right, it's about 60%.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you. So relative to that, as we've talked before, and I've asked the question, I do have questions about the peaks test and I've had some conversations with DED. One of the things that was indicated to me is that DED is going to bring some group of Alaska teachers to look at some of the questions and maybe even develop some Alaska-developed questions. Have you heard anything further on that? And are we looking to have some educators involved on that from our district?
I have not heard anything further on that at this time. I do know that the state is considering whether or not peaks even will be the long-term assessment being used. There are other measures being talked about at the state level and by the Superintendent's Association.
And I could just add, I think everybody's in a bit of a holding pattern waiting for the election. Depending on the results of that, we could have a new commissioner, an entirely new state board of education. There could be big changes. The push from the Superintendent's Association, it'll take probably 2 or 3 years, but is for NWEA MAP to become not only our formative assessment system, but also our comprehensive, our summative assessment system. So it'll be interesting to see how all those dynamics play out. We've always been invited to the table and have had great participation, though, with educators, so I wouldn't anticipate any change there when the opportunity comes. So.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that there may be some increased conversation, because previously with my conversation with DED is there is no item analysis planned, no review of cut scores, appropriateness for ethnicities or cultural backgrounds in the state, et cetera. So I'm glad that there maybe is something, and the superintendents are also involved with that. Thank you. Okay, I'll pause that, put me on later.
Okay. Ms. Lambert.
So looking at the comprehensive support in the schools, 3 of the schools are different types of learning schools for us. So one, what are the consequences of not moving out of that group after however long that you're supposed to? And 2, do they take into consideration, like for Star of the North Charter School for the CEC, they don't get their students until they're probably juniors or seniors, which is why they're there, in order to be able to graduate, 18, 19, or 20 years old. So they're not going to hit that 4-year mark. So are there any considerations for the alternative schools that are out there?
I can definitely comment on that. I just came back from a technical advisory committee with the state, and that was a discussion that we had. And with the waiver for No Child Left Behind and the Alaska School Performance Index, that in between accountability system, there was an adjustment to the model for alternative schools, where if I'm remembering correctly, what they did was they weighted the growth data more heavily. So instead of 40%, it was 50 or 60% for alternative schools, to try and deal with exactly what you're talking about, of considering the fact of the group of students that come to those schools. And the data manager that was the one that had worked on that, is also part of the NCES forum. He was the state representative, and I'm the district representative to that. And he asked that openly of, are our states going to have that flexibility to do that with ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act? And there's kind of a dance around that question at that time, and eventually it sounds like that's going to be either not going to happen, or it's going to be difficult for our state to be able to try and implement that again. They did have that intention of doing that, and it's sounding like it's going to be a challenge for them to do that.
So I can add to that just a little bit.
And then the consequences of not coming out of that.
So the Every Student Succeeds Act is fairly vague on that, much more vague than No Child Left Behind was. It talks about increasing state involvement, as broad as that. So Jenny Randall, who is also here tonight, she's the ESEA Program Compliance Coordinator, and I have been on the phone with the state, it feels like daily, several times a week for the past few weeks, just asking questions and prepping, because what these comprehensive support and targeted support schools will start tomorrow is an improvement planning process. And we do keep focusing on the alternative nature of these schools, and not wanting to discourage our schools from serving the populations of students that they serve. And the state reiterates for us that they agree, and that their focus is going to be on a robust improvement planning process. And we're starting that tomorrow. The leaders of these schools are coming together, and we're going to talk about the needs assessment planning process. And then in December, teams with stakeholder input will go through that, as well as plans for improvement. And so the state currently is telling us that their focus is on robust improvement planning and not on that end score.
Yeah, I certainly would like the mindset of to get away from the concept of consequences and more into concepts of support, that these results are often just reflecting the groups of students in these schools, and it's just simply saying that there's a need for additional support, such as some additional funding to focus in on providing support. And I think the state is coming from that angle, which is very different, and that's my personal opinion, and I think it sounded like that's the direction that they're going.
Ms. Moratti. I'm sorry, Ms. Anderson, then Ms. Moratti.
So my first question is, under the ESSA, I thought that districts could have a more input and strategy for how they would plan on meeting students' needs. Is that still the case?
Yes, very much. There are state forms for us to fill out to prove we've gone through a robust needs assessment process, but we can control that process. And then the state, for comprehensive support schools, the state needs to approve their plans, but again, they're going to approve it based on our needs assessment process and our planning process. So yes, we have a lot of control.
Okay, and then under your subgroup, is there any significance in the way they're listed?
Just in the same orders published by the state.
So did the state, or do you know if the state took into account that some of the subgroups that you've listed actually could have to fall into more than one category?
So for race and this ethnicity specifically, our state, in their state plan, defined the major racial and ethnic categories, which Every Student Succeeds Act purposely makes that vague, and that it's well, not vague, that's the language that's there, and that the states define that, and our state has defined it in such a way that if a student is in, let's say, African American and Caucasian, they're put into two or more races groups, so that each student isn't in multiple categories. And this is something I've discussed with the board pretty extensively, and I've put in public comment with the state to say that they needed to change their major racial and ethnic categories, and they did not change it. So students won't be counted twice, as you're saying, within the race and ethnic groups, because each of these are actually, like, say, for African American for example, that's the group of students that they're African American only. They can't be also Hispanic. They can't be also an additional race. But with students with disabilities, English learners, and economically disadvantaged, you could be in one or all three or two of those.
Just to follow up. So what I was actually getting at is the economically disadvantaged that hits students. So they could be African American and be at a disadvantage economically. Are they looking at that also? Because poverty is the enemy. It's what we're up against in delivering our education mode to our students.
Okay, so for the index, they're not doing that. They're looking at those separately. Right.
Done? Okay, Ms. Moratti.
Under the comprehensive support in our school district, where it lists our alternative schools, you mentioned that they adjust the numbers due to growth data, so they weight them more heavily according to their data, if I'm understanding that correctly. Are the numbers, is that correct? And then if so, are the numbers that we are looking at right now, are those the weighted numbers? Or are they before?
So that's what the state was using for the previous accountability system, the Alaska School Performance Index. This is the new one where there's no additional weighting for anything different for alternative schools.
So essentially, under the Every Student Succeeds Act, there are no alternative schools for purposes of the index.
Mr. Rice?
Just real quick to kind of follow up. So, and you were talking about this before, like last year. So if I on my information that I give to the school, I put down I'm part Hispanic, part Alaska Native. They would only see me as Hispanic?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
So if I was doing well, they put me as a Hispanic doing well, not Alaska Native doing well.
Correct.
Which could skew this number right here that we have for Lathrop at 13.68.
Correct. Yes. For the benefit of the public, the reminder is that, for example, with Alaska Native, like you're saying, half or over half of students that identify Alaska Native also identify as potentially also American Indian, also Hispanic, also an additional race. And you're absolutely correct that with the system of doing that, those students are not included in that measure. And as the board knows, in any of my data dashboards, I actually provide both metrics, and that's where I say federal race ethnicity. That's the one that's used here, and then I have the Caucasian star, the Alaska Native star, where I include students that are also Hispanic or an additional race. So it's an important distinction to note that you would have very different results. Yeah, you do.
And the beauty of it is that our Title I schools, when they look at data, they look at the data the way that we break it down as a district, as opposed to they also look at the way it needs to be reported federally, but they find it more helpful to look at the way that Dr. Ott breaks it down.
Mr. Dorn and then Ms. Sanderson.
Two things. One, just an observation, because I don't know that you have that much control over it, but when we talk about races or ethnicities, I know the federal government is behind in terms of this one race. And I don't know if when we do our information, we could use ethnicities or, since it all is one, they're not two or more races. But maybe that's an editorial, but when we can do some of our own designing and helping with that, I think that information can be important. I wanted to go back to the alternative school efforts and the advocacy, how we might advocate for that is part of the line that I'm interested in. When you talk about robust improvement planning, I was very glad to hear about the focus is on supporting the schools, not directing the schools. But is there in the conversation maybe a recognition that it's not, when they talk about it, an improvement plan, that it's not necessarily improvement change for the sake of change? And I know that was one of the drawbacks of NCLB, that you almost had to have a checklist that you were changing this or changing that, whereas if something was working well, you had to really go 2 or 3 extra steps to show that this is good. And I'm thinking that particularly with some of these alternative programs that are catching kids and finding something that is really working. Now, if it's not working for these 3 kids or something like this, I mean, I've been at these programs and I know they're trying to get there, but is that a balance in that conversation that's coming from the state and the feds?
It's a little bit hard for me to answer. I can say there's a balance in the process that we use in our district, in that we always start with where's our growth, what are we doing well, what is working for kids. The nature of the improvement planning forms that we need to turn in, you're identifying three indicators based on the seven domains of quality schools. You're familiar with that from your Title I principal days. You're picking up to 3 indicators of needed focus, and so your improvement planning is focused on an area of need, and once you get significant improvement in that area of need, you get to where you're maintaining or sustaining that, and you pick another one. So you're constantly looking for continuous improvement.
And the district support to that, and are there still state supports that they're coming in with?
For schools identified as comprehensive
support schools. Their plans are required to be approved by the state, and it also involves additional state support and district support for schools identified as targeted assistance. Their plans only need to be approved at the district level, and then as a district we're required to provide supports and to let the state know what supports we are providing.
Okay, and last part of that is the question to the school, how can we help you? And the reason I ask that is because having had the experience of being the proud principal of a alternative governance school under the old system, that was the most powerful thing to our community is the district came and said, how can we help you? And so it was pushing us sometimes to reflect on pieces, but it was really that type of effort as opposed to, I know some places had a more punitive approach, and that's why I was really glad to hear that strong support element. But
my approach to leadership is servant leadership, so I certainly hope that if anyone on the board hears from any of the leaders of these comprehensive or targeted support schools that I'm coming in, or that the district's coming in with a heavy hammer, that you'll give me that feedback. It's certainly not the approach that, well, I would say it's not my approach, nor is it the culture of our district. We don't have that culture in our district currently.
Right. Okay, and I can attest to how good that productive it was with that support, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Ms. Anderson.
So under the targeted support for this school, since it's dealing with a subgroup, I don't even like to say that, but the consideration for foster care and for the transit, traveling between once a student is established in our school and academically more supported and actually starting to show improvement, and then that student goes away and it's coming back and forth. Are any of those things been considered, or are they factored into this target school? And then finally, what is the support for this targeted school going to look like, if you know?
Well, the beauty of it is that starting tomorrow, we'll start the process to define for the Lathrop High School team. So let's say that, okay, so tomorrow the leaders of these identified schools are coming in for a planning session. We're going to set some dates with them. In December, we'll spend an all-day session with them, and Lathrop will have a team at a table that will include stakeholders. And Lathrop gets to look seriously at data, and starting tomorrow, the Lathrop principal and her team are building a data request list for us. And it is common for principals to ask to look at transiency rate data, the number of students in foster care, the number of students in McKinney-Vento, because they're trying to get as broad of a picture as they can. And so starting tomorrow, leaders will put those data requests in. We'll be pulling that data together for them over the next month. Mid-December, fuller teams are coming together, and they will process that data together. We facilitate the processing of that data, and then they identify their needs, and then they identify their support needs, and from there we move forward. And so what's the beauty of it is Lathrop will be figuring that out. We're facilitating them in figuring that out.
Go ahead. One final question. Since this has to do with A&E students and American Indian students, what's the role that the A&E department and or federal programs? And I have something I don't know how to do this, so I'll have to a strategy I'd like to talk to you about.
That'd be wonderful. Please do.
Okay.
Principal Sween has already indicated that she'd love to have Director Yetabey Evans at the table and a representative from the Fairbanks Native Association at the table. She would have her tutors, her A&E tutors, but we do not have tutors in either open position at Lathrop High School right now, so we can't include that. She will have a paraprofessional at the table, though, as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Dorn.
just a thought, and Ms. Anderson prompted my thinking on it. But going back to you, Dr. Gaborik, when you were talking about superintendents promoting, looking at different test options, et cetera, and maybe between both perspectives, MAP, peaks, all those questions have been generated from outside. And in terms of like looking at one specific ethnicity, perhaps part of that improvement planning to look at whether we have an appropriate measure, their assessment tool being appropriate to finding out whether those students are really, whether we're really learning from them what they know. And I'm encouraged by some of what you've been saying, because it's really bringing to the fore that we can ask these questions in the group planning. So I would really promote that as we look at different groups, that we really look, do we have the appropriate assessment that we're using? And since the state is dragging their feet on actually doing that type of analysis, that the actual planning improvement might be able to bring those questions to the fore and could be part of the improvement thing.
Certainly. I agree with you, and I believe that a conversation about the summative assessment is important to continue to have. I'm going to be very brave in stating this, though. If you look at Alaska Native student data for our district, while I'm very proud of improvements over time, it's fun when we celebrate the improvements, there's a gap in graduation rate. There's a gap in achievement rate on peaks. There's a gap in achievement rate on MAPS. There's a gap in attendance rate. And so for me, while I don't like Lathrop necessarily being singled out, I think it's fine for us to have the hard conversation about why is that gap still there. And so for me, it's improvement planning and focusing on exactly what we need to be doing, a vulnerable group, that while we're making improvements, and we need to be proud of that, for whom we're not truly closing the achievement gap.
Any other questions, comments? Ms. Sanderson.
Out of the subgroups, free and reduced lunch, do you know what the percentage of out of the subgroups that in our district that are qualified for free and reduced lunches?
Alice will give us the exact number. District-wide, it's about 31%.
And then the last question is, out of the other high schools in the Alaska Native category, you looked at all those scores?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
So you're looking at me like I could give you score. Okay.
Questions, comments? You know, we didn't ask, or do we ask for public comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm coming behind. Anybody in the public would like to come forward and make a comment, a public testimony on this action item? Information and report. Seeing none. Dr. Gaborik.
And I think just one thing to remember for context, the state made a heroic effort to have an accountability plan that met the needs of the state, and we're not terribly successful in that effort. So there is the overlay of the Department of Education and the current philosophies there, and so we just always have to keep that in mind. And then the other thing is, again, as we look at election results tonight, DEED continues. They've been reduced significantly over the last couple administrations. So their capacity, knowing the people that work there and what they do try to accomplish, I don't know that they're dragging their feet. I don't know that they have the capacity. And so hopefully, if that shifts, but if it doesn't shift, I don't know that they'll have the capacity to do some of the work that we're hoping they would do. And I don't know where that would fall on the priorities list. So I think it's just a reality to keep in mind. So,
thank you. Seeing none, thank you very much for your report. And we'll move on to the superintendent report. Our goal and objectives, effective communication, establish relevant, inclusive, and consistent two-way communication to encourage student, parents, staff, and community connectedness with the district and increase the diversity of voices within the district. Superintendent Dr. Gaborik will provide a superintendent report.
Thank you. So I presented the state of the schools at Chamber today, and it went very well. It always draws a good crowd for them. And I think the state of the schools I delivered today was one of the best I've done. So proud of that, and I thank Tim Doran and Colonel Fisher for attending and bringing people. And we had lots of staff and principals. We had principals who attended as well. So thanks to folks who were there. I just wanted to touch again on the LGBTQ resolutions. It sounds like there have been some calls to a few folks about that resolution and questions. I believe Ms. Dominique received one this week. So I just want to read again the last line of the resolution that was passed by the board on October 16th. So the last paragraph there, the last sentence is, now therefore be it resolved, the Fairbanks North Scarborough Board of Education joins others in recognizing October 2018 as National LGBTQ History Month and encourages schools throughout the district to promote a community where all students and staff feel supported and affirmed. And I think the questions that are coming in are parents and others perhaps asking questions about what might be changing in the classroom. So communication to principals from assistant superintendents has focused on the fact that on that night the board identified a value and a belief that all students should be able to attend school in a welcoming and safe environment, and recognition that we do have a diverse student and community population, and that a school should be a place of belonging for everybody. So that's been the communication that's come out of our office. There has not been any communication from the district office to change the curriculum. So again, I just wanted to mention that. So, and if folks do need, if folks have questions, I really encourage them to refer the callers to the teaching and learning department, and they can answer specific questions that, you know, these topics are covered at, you know, especially you start getting into the high school grade level. Again, you're talking about history, you're talking about health, you know, so there are conversations around these topics already happening, and again, so if people have questions about what that looks like, you know, they can call Teaching and Learning and find out. So Ryan Middle School recently hosted a Bring Your Parent to Work Day, which was a fun event that got sent my way. They had 63 parents come to school that day, and Assistant Principal Petra Timmons shared that parents had so much enthusiasm about education, and they were excited about their teachers, and really enjoying the good vibes at Lathrop, and very appreciative of the invitation to come into the building. So they asked for another opportunity to visit in the spring, and then once the students realized how many parents were coming, they went down to the office to sort of create these welcoming committees and welcome the kids in. So that was nice. This one's going to blow your mind if you've been tracking this ever. So Dave Norum and Mark Nilsson reworked some of the projects and submitted 4 to the Capital Improvement Project's major maintenance list, and for the first time ever, Barnett is ranked number 1. So, now all this has to, you know, depends on whether or not there will be. Congratulations. Yep. Working the magic, always working the magic. So if there is capital projects money this year, hopefully we will be considered. We're first on the list. They could always go around us. They could go right around us. So we've experienced that before, but we are first on the list. So thank you very much for that work. By 14 points. That's, yeah. Woohoo! Someday he can go through that, how those points are assigned. Nutrition Services just completed an audit, and they received rave reviews from the auditors who came out of Florida to visit the school district. I just want to read highlights of some of those reviews that include the following. Some of the comments that they received. Technology integration and utilization in the department is excellent. Department documentation paperwork and forms are impeccable and will be used as a best practice example to demonstrate to other districts. The fresh fruit and vegetable program is the best that this particular auditor had seen in 12 years of visiting districts, and she singled out Joy Elementary as a particularly impressive program in this area. The warehouse facility and staff were the most impressive they've seen in any district in 10 years. Department menus were perfect, and this was the first time in 3 years that they'd seen that. And the staff who were observed genuinely took pride in their work and cared about doing a good job. So this is really an amazing audit report for Amy Rouse and her wonderful staff to be recognized for all their hard work and their attention to detail. So huge kudos to Amy. An interesting note about social media. So Facebook blocked all the district boosted posts about the strategic plan and budget surveys last week because they started classifying all education related posts and banning them under the ban of posts of a political nature or of national significance. So figure that one out. Our communications, development, and engagement, the timing is terrible, of course, right? We're trying to get input on our budget and strategic plan. It's a very lengthy process with Facebook to manually, you have to manually approve that each post can be approved. We've never had to deal with this before, so we're hopeful that after tonight, that will go back down to normal. There's been a lot of social media noise in general with the election, so again, we've just kind of pushed pause. After the election, we'll start pushing out all of our social media information again and our requests for public input on things like budget and the strategic plan. So I just hadn't even heard of that before. I thought that was so interesting. Interesting might not be the word that Heather uses. And then finally, the October count is complete. Our official count is 13,000 that we send to the state, 13,279, which is 364 students below projection, which is significant. And again, we'll have more conversation about this, but this will impact the current year revenue from the state by $3.2 million. So I will send a document to the board that shows the over-under, because it's interesting to look at each school and how that plays out. So I'll send that to you. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gaborg. Any questions of Dr. Gaborg? Mr. Dorn, I'm sorry.
Not so much a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for reality checks periodically.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that. So I'll still keep pushing, but
yeah.
I appreciate those.
Okay. We're moving on. Next is action item old business. We have no old business, so we will move on to action items new business. Resolution 2019-09, recognizing American Education Week. Core values, high expectations, maintain high expectations and educational opportunities to inspire a high achievement. And I need to read the motion. Read the resolution.
Need a motion. Okay. Move to approve Resolution 2019-09, recognizing American Education Week.
Second.
Okay. And this is American Education Week, and I would like Ms. Sanderson to read it, please.
Whereas public education in Fairbanks dates from 1904, and whereas a strong system of public education has created opportunity for generations of citizens to recognize their ability and realize their potential, and whereas American Education Week represents the citizens of Interior Alaska with a wonderful opportunity to celebrate public education and honor individuals who are making a difference in ensuring that every child receives an excellent and equitable education. And whereas public support of education is important today as it was in 1919 when American Education Week was first established. And whereas many influential organizations, including the National Education Association, the Parent-Teacher Association, the American Association of School Boards, and the United States Government Department of Education, DEED, lends their support to this recognition. And whereas a National Education Week is for the purpose of informing the public of the accomplishments and needs of public schools and to secure the cooperation and support of the public in meeting those needs. And whereas the educators, parents, and community partners who guide our children through the many milestones of learning deserve our highest admiration, respect, and support for investing in young people's future. And whereas we all have a stake in public education and we all have a role to play. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Fairbanks North Star Borough Board of Education proclaims the week of November 12th through 16th, 2018, in recognition of American Education Week, encourages schools to celebrate their excellence in education by hosting kickoff events, activities, inviting parents into the classrooms for a first-hand look at their children's school day, recognizing support staff, substitute educators for all that they do, and inviting agency partners and current community leaders into our schools to join educators and support staff as they educate the future leaders of our community.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public testimony? Seeing none, back to the board for questions or comments on this resolution. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Mr. Jerome?
Yes.
Colonel Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mrs. Lambert?
Yes.
Miss Marati?
Yes.
Mrs. Dominique?
You know, I like being last. Yes.
Motion carried.
Can I change the first sometimes? No. Okay, we're moving on for Resolution 2019-10, honoring Veterans Day. Core value is respect and respect the diversity and dignity of all. I'm calling for a motion for someone to read the motion. The motion for the resolution.
I move to approve Resolution 2019-10, honoring Veterans Day.
Second.
Colonel Fisher, would you like to read that for us, please?
I'd be happy to. Fairbanks North Star Borough Board of Education Resolution 2019-10, honoring Veterans Day. Whereas the United States of America was founded on the principles of liberty, opportunity, and justice for all. And whereas America has called on her men and women in uniform to protect our national security, to advance our national interests, and to preserve our rights and freedoms. And whereas on Veterans Day, we recognize the men and women of our armed forces, past and present, who have valiantly defended these values throughout our nation's history. And whereas serving as educators, support staff, board members, parents, and in other important capacities, these patriots have made contributions to civilian life that serve as a testament to their dedication to the welfare of our country. And whereas on Veterans Day, we also remember and pay tribute to the millions of patriots whose courage and sacrifice have defended and secured our freedom around the globe. And whereas we honor all men and women currently serving in the military for their sacrifices. Now therefore be it resolved, the Fairbanks North Star Borough Board of Education recognizes Veterans Day on the 11th day of November and calls for educators, students, parents, and community partners to honor it and the special men and women who have served our country with lessons, guest speakers, displays, lectures, and other activities throughout the district and community.
Thank you, Colonel Fisher. Is there any public testimony on this resolution? Seeing none, back to the board for questions and comments. Seeing none, Sharon, can you give us the vote?
Colonel Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jerome?
Yes.
Miss Marati?
Yes.
Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mrs. Lambert?
Yes.
Mrs. Dominique?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, so we're going to move on. I will read the selection. Am I starting right? Selection of the Chief Negotiator for the commencement of the Education Support Staff Association, ESSA, and the Fairbanks Education Association, FEA, and the Fairbanks Principal Association, FPA, negotiations. Okay, the goal and objectives, organizational support, create an environment that supports the needs of staff to enable a school and organizational climate where students thrive. I need the motion.
Move to name Ivory McDaniel, Director of Labor Relations, as the Chief Negotiator for the school board in its negotiations with the Fairbanks Principals Association, the Fairbanks Education Association, and the Education Support Staff Association.
Second.
It says here to read the note. Do I read that now? Okay. State statute provides that before commencing bargaining, the school board shall provide opportunities for public comment on the issues to be addressed in the collective bargaining process. Therefore, the school board is providing a formal opportunity for public input on salaries, benefits, and other contractual issues prior to beginning of negotiations with Education Support Staff Association, ESSA, the Fairbanks Education Association, FEA, and the Fairbanks Principal Association, FPA, at any regular school board meeting. The public is also invited to email comments to school board at schoolboard@k12northstar.org or send written comments to the school board office, 525th Avenue, Fairbanks, Alaska, 997-01-4756. The current contracts between ESSA, FEA, FPA, and the school district will expire on June 30th, 2019. In order to begin negotiations with ESSA, FEA, and FPA, the school board needs to name a chief negotiator. Ivory McDaniels, the district's director of labor relations, is recommended to serve as the school board's chief negotiator. Do we call for the vote now? Public comment. Okay. Any public comment on this item, action item? Okay. Turn to the admin for a report.
So we continue to prepare for negotiations with all three of our bargaining units, and I've had conversations with actually each association president, some of them a couple times now, getting ready for that. My recommendation is that the board name Ivory McDaniel as the chief negotiator. She'll be part, however, she won't be acting alone, obviously. She'll be part of a very tight core team, herself, Claire Morton, and Andy DeGraw. Kind of the next circle will be Sean Kraska and Kate LaFont, and then we always bring in principals as needed, and we also bring in folks like Dave Norum and other staff as needed. So, but in terms of actually naming the lead negotiator and the point of contact, that'll be Ivory. So that's my recommendation to the board, is that it be Ivory McDaniel.
Okay. Call for the vote now. Oh, any questions or comments from the board? I turned the page, that's why I didn't know what to do. None? Now for the vote? Okay.
Colonel Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jerome?
Yes.
Ms. Marati?
Yes.
Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mrs. Lambert?
Yes.
Mrs. Dominique?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, now we are to board and superintendent comments and committee reports. Wow, we're there already. We're moving right along. Goal and objectives. Effective communication. Establish relevant, inclusive, and consistent two-way communication to enable, encourage student, parent, staff, and community correctness with the district and increase the diversity of voices within the district. Okay. We'll start with board comments or superintendent first. You want to go first? Okay, we'll let you go first.
I just have one set of announcements. We always pretty soon we'll get to see results ourselves, right? But we have the results of the kids voting from earlier today, and so let me tell you. We had a total of 3,891 students participate this year, which was an increase over the last time we had a gubernatorial election. It was 3,662. We had 22 schools participate, and we also had booths at ICS, both libraries and the Children's Museum. So lots of opportunities for kids to vote. And here were the results from students for Governor, Lieutenant Governor Mike Dunleavy and Kevin Meyer, Senator CA Scott Kawasaki, State Senate Seat C, Click Bishop. State House District 1, Catherine Dodge. State House District 2, Van Lawrence. State House District 3, Tammy Wilson. State House District 4, Grier Hopkins. State House District 5, Adam Wool. State House District 6, Ed Alexander. U.S. Representative Elise Galvin, and then Proposition 1 also passed. So
wonderful.
So our students participated in the process, and we thank lots of people involved with that. Not to forget to mention Peggy Carlson, who still is very involved in kids voting. So
wonderful
involvement. So thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll start down at this end now. Colonel, is that what we're going into? Okay. You looked at, I was doing something wrong, that's why. Okay. Colonel Fisher.
And I was just thankful that Dr. Gaborik took the pressure off of me having to start.
We always start at that end.
So I just appreciate the board's support in the Veterans Day resolution. Encourage everyone to come out on Sunday, the 11th, for the commemoration at the Westmark. So I'll be participating in that as I did last year. And then thanks to Mike Campbell, I know several of our schools have events that are planned, I think mostly on Friday, based on it being a school day. And so I really do appreciate the district's strong support for the military all the time, but particularly for this particular resolution. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Ms. Lambert.
Well, I just want to congratulate Mr. Norm for getting Barnett as the #1 on the state CIP list, because it's been a long time coming, and that's just the first hurdle, right? Now we got to wait and see what happens after that. And then congratulations to the Nutrition Services for just a fantastic job that they've been doing for all of our schools, and obviously the auditors thought the same thing, so that's great. And welcome, Ms. Sanderson and Ms. Moretti, to your very first board meeting, and we made it very easy for you tonight because it's an early one, so welcome aboard. Thanks. There's not going to be, I don't think there's a policy committee meeting scheduled for a while. I think we're going to wait until we have all of Chapter 9 ready to go, and then my guess is we'll probably be meeting more than just once a month or once a quarter after that. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Lambert. Mr. Rice.
Well, I'm going to say welcome aboard. You guys got a nice, easy one. My first board meeting, we went until like 11:30. So, and Wendy, congratulations, doing a good job. And Ms. Ivory,
there she is.
Congratulations.
Got to look around the pole.
I couldn't see you. I got the pole right there. We do have a nice, good working relationship with, our corresponding unions, and, we're going to continue to do so. And, it gets, for the new board members, we do have some trial and error, but, we do realize that we are here for the children, and we will get through these negotiations as we go along. But it's also due, with our negotiating team that we have on this side as well too. So, really don't have a CTE meeting, right? Not yet. So, but I still want to get you and Dr. Gaborik through, we still need to do the walkthrough through Public Works. Got my boss still, open for that. It'd be really good here real quick when the snow falls, so you guys be able to come in and start seeing how we do our snow removal and everything else, and then, be able to use that and see what we can do through the training as well too. I do know that there is a pipeline ceremony that's coming up. So I don't think we're here for that. That's on the 11th. Yeah. So I'm sorry I'm going to miss that, but it's always a great thing. About 20 years ago, I was through the second pipeline training center, and it's pretty fun. They put us through a lot of the rigging and a lot of the putting the pipeline together, and our final test is doing it in front of the whole audience, so they could see how we do things up on the pipeline as well too. So it's pretty amazing what these kids can do, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Ms. Marotti.
I just wanted to say thank you to those that testified tonight. I know they're not here anymore, but I'm sure they're listening or will be listening again soon. But thank you for the testimonies tonight. Thank you to the board and the district staff for the warm welcome I've received over the last couple of weeks. Your patience with my many, many questions, and just the onboarding process has been really nice, and I thank Sharon a lot for that. I've admired you guys for a very long time, and so I'm super excited to work with all of you. And I'm hoping to meet, if I haven't met you yet, I'm hoping to meet with you very soon. But thank you for all of your work, and I look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Marotti. Mr. Dorn.
Just a couple of things. I want to thank the schools for their hospitality when I go out to visit, and how much they appreciate board members coming. But the most important thing is really seeing what they're doing in the classrooms. And, it's important to see it at the front line. I'm so impressed with the different techniques that teachers are using with students, and so what students are doing, with support staff, how they're taking care of schools and supporting what's going on in the classrooms. And I really appreciated like Midnight Sun band coming tonight, because sometimes we just, because of our schedules, we can't get to the schools and see the front line, so they brought the front line to us, and that they took the extra effort with the bus transportation tonight and such. So the parents who supported that really appreciate it. Also, I wanted to just make a note of how much it was appreciated with the Borough Assembly and Mayor and his staff to meet with us last night in a joint work session. That communication and conversation is so important, and so I appreciate their taking that time as we talked last night. Look forward to that continuing, and I look forward to joining with the Alaska State Board meeting in Anchorage, because I think it's really important that we have a connection with boards around the state, and it helps us from just being insular. And what I found over the years in going to the state conferences and the principals, we share so many students who, between the villages, between the cities, and so it puts us in a better position to really serve all our students. And so I think that's an important connection. All right, thank you.
Ms. Anderson.
Well, I want to thank everybody for their warm welcoming on the board, and I really understand how the board does get things accomplished with Ms. Tuttle in place here. I'm telling you, this is a national treasure we have over there. So I really appreciate her as I struggle through all this. But I'm not sure, Mr. Rice, how easy this was when I have to hear about, coming out of a classroom to sit on the board and to participate on another whole venue and perspective. So when I hear that schools are struggling, especially a department that I have a great love for, this is dear to my heart, and hopefully we can, start to look at some strategies to turn this thing around, because students are able to do great things when they have the support. But, school districts can only control so much. There are so many things and so many variables that we have absolutely no control over when we are trying to meet the needs of students in this community. And that's never taken into account of any sort of work that we do. So I'm proud to, be a part of the change, and hopefully what the work that's in front of us, and it's depending on the election, it may be difficult or it might get a little bit easier. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm here to do the work, and I appreciate the support. And I will be, making some visits on my own to familiarize myself with things and just, basically to, again, reiterate the wonderful work that our district does. We have fantastic people in the chairs and behind the desks and in the hallways, and our students are achieving constantly great things. And when they throw these numbers at us all the time, it's sort of frustrating because we see what they're accomplishing in this, and so I just want to be a part of what's going to take place in whatever form that's going to look like. So it's going to get interesting, I'm sure. Thank you.
Mr. Jerome.
I want to welcome our 2 new school board members. It's very exciting to have new faces. I also wanted to thank the CTE department. I was able to go down, I think it was just last week. It feels like forever ago. I was in Indianapolis for the National FFA convention, and I got to represent Alaska and got to represent Hutchinson High School in the school district, and that was a really great opportunity for me. So I wanted to thank the CTE department and thank the school district for that opportunity. I wanted to talk about the 2 young women who came forward and testified about the dress code. They're certainly not the only people students that I've heard expressing concerns about it. And what I hear mostly is, can we please at least have them take a look at that and deem whether or not those policies are necessary? If the administration comes back and finds that is something all those rules are something that are necessary, I think that the students would be more than happy to abide by that. But when it hasn't been reviewed in 4 years, and everybody knows that things are changing rapidly in this day and age, especially for our generation, that leggings and yoga pants weren't even being worn nearly as much 4 years ago. So just re-examining those policies is something that a lot of students feel strongly about. In addition to that, the 2 young ladies came forward and they said that sometimes the rules were not enforced fairly. And one thing that I believe something that I have noticed around school is that the price of the article of clothing that might be violating the dress code dictates how it is enforced. When somebody is wearing a more expensive pair of yoga pants or leggings, it's not oftentimes dress coded, and I think that raises a serious issue about how we're enforcing rules, and I would hope that is isolated to just how we're enforcing the dress code, but I just wanted to bring that to the attention. And the other thing I wanted to bring forward is a number of students who have come to me and told me that they don't feel like they have enough time. And this is primarily, this is high schoolers that I've talked to, and primarily upperclassmen, that they don't feel like they have enough time to socialize. And I started thinking it through, and I talked about this at the last school board meetings. I wake up at 5:30 to 6, and I get ready for school, and I go to school, and I do my schoolwork, and then I have lunch. And I have to go to my locker and grab my lunch and find somewhere to sit and eat my lunch. And then I have to go back to my locker and put my stuff away and go to class. And after all that, I really don't have that much time to turn my brain off of schoolwork and focus on being a teenager and being a human being. And so I would hope that we could take a look into possibly working in more time for students to socialize without the need for assignments. It's important to me that students are well-rounded, and well-rounded doesn't just mean sports, extracurriculars, and school. It means time to socialize as well. So those are the concerns that students had voiced to me that I wanted to bring forward. But again, welcome to our 2 new school board members. It's very exciting to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Jerome. Dr. Gaborik, I kind of wanted to ask about the time. Weren't we going to look into the time changing periods? Time frame, because it has been brought up a couple of times.
You talk about bell schedule?
Yeah.
So high schools, make those determinations. There are some, in terms of West Valley and Lathrop students accessing Hutch, there's some things that they need to consider. That's not something that we, it's been a while when we aligned the schedules so that could happen. But I've told high school principals if they want to, again, it's a school community, so they have lots of stakeholders there. If they want to do different things with their bell schedules, I have no problem with that. I just need to make sure that students have access to Hutch. That's really important to me. So, beyond that, I think each school community kind of figures out which makes sense for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to thank the Midnight Sun Elementary School, the music that we had tonight. Sorry for the late arrival, but we got our music anyway. Also, congratulations to the ASAA First National Bank Alaska Cross Country Running State Champion Kendall Kramer and the ESP of the Month, Connie Cluton. And I wanted to be sure that board members were aware that we plan to have a November 26th meeting, work session, to talk about budget, conversation about budget. And we plan to vote on December 4th meeting from the work session. Is that correct?
I believe that is, what we have scheduled.
Okay, so let me know, let Sharon know. Sharon would probably be the better person to let her know if you're going to be available to attend that meeting on the 26th. It would be here in the boardroom if it's available. Okay, and that would be at 5:30?
Discipline at 5:30, work session at 6.
Okay, discipline at 5:30, work session at 6. And November 19th has been canceled. Thank you very much for Dr. Ott and Ms. Helen for bringing the ESEA, Every Student Succeed Act, forward so we could ask questions about that. I am delighted and I'm excited about Barnett School being on the list as number 1. I know Dave Norm has worked on this heavily and heartily. I've gone and testified over at the Borough Assembly. I wanted them to put it on their list, but Dave Norm told me we had a good chance, and I see what you're coming through with now, Dave. I couldn't see it before, but I see it now. And thank you for all your hard work. And I also wanted to comment on Ms. Marati and Ms. Anderson. Thank you for being on the board. You have lots to look forward to, many late nights. And no, I didn't say that. I went and shadowed the teacher, Ms. Kay, over at Arctic Light School. I really appreciated the way she's teaching our kids. I believe she's teaching 5th grade, 4th grade, one of those two. And she does I'm going to call it old school teaching. She teaches a lot from the book, but she does let the students use computers. I truly love that style of teaching because I think sometimes we get into these innovative ways of doing things. We use computers just way too much sometimes, in my opinion. And I think we need to teach kids how to write their name, how to use cursive, and those things will carry kids a lot further than a computer most of the time. I'm not downing your computers, Janet. I'm just simply saying sometimes we do use them a little bit too much. They work on my eyes really bad, and I know some kids have problems with being on computers quite a bit. But I thoroughly enjoyed her teaching style and the things she was doing with her students in the classroom. I enjoyed the Borough work session, joint session that we had the other day, and I really am looking forward to more conversation with the Borough and resolving our issues with communication. And I want to thank everyone for giving me congratulations for being president. I'm not real sure about this position yet, but we'll see as time goes on. But thank you all, and if we can have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.